please, Kelly. This is Kelly Lockhart, ABS back developer and outreach extraordinaire person. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thanks. Also, hello to everybody watching online. If you have any questions, I think you can type them into YouTube, and then some of our employees here are watching, and so you can ask questions that way. But good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this special day and time, early in the morning. But if you haven't found it already, there's breakfast snacks over in the corner. So let's go ahead and get started. So probably most of you know, but maybe not everybody, the Classic ADS is going away in October. Right now we're scheduled for the end of October. So if you're still actively using Classic, even though there's all sorts of banners and things telling you you should move over, let me tell you again, you should move over. If you have any questions, let us know. That's what these sessions are for, is to get you all used to the new system, get you over any hurdles that you may face. There's a little bit of a learning curve. We think, though, that for software that you use every single day, it's worth learning the new system. Most people, after a couple days of using exclusively the new system, find it's just as easy, if not easier, to use than the old one. Some of the syntax in the old one was a little weird for people who were just getting started in the field. So this one we think is a lot more user-friendly for people just getting started. There's a couple things you need to know before Classic goes away. One thing, in the new system, you should definitely make a new user account, especially if you had one in Classic. You don't have to have a user account to use the system, but there's a couple of things that you can access only if you have a user account. One thing is private libraries. So if you want to save any papers that you're looking at for later, if you have a user account, you can make those private libraries, do a bunch of different stuff with them. I'm not going to have time to get into libraries much today. If you have any questions, though, we can talk about it after the talk is over. Also talking about private libraries, if you had any private libraries in Classic, they will not automatically move to the new system for you. So once you make your new account in the new system, we do have an import tool. And again, I can show you how to use that afterwards if you need to. But once you import all your libraries, they'll live in the new system for you. You can keep working with them as usual. And then eventually, we're still working on it, if you had My ADS notifications, if you were notified of new papers from arXiv or new citations to your own papers every week, we are still working on the replacement for that in the new system. Eventually, we'll have an import tool just like Classic, or just like the library system does. So you can move all your My ADS notifications over as well. Keep an eye out if you have My ADS notifications set up. We'll send you all emails when it's time to move all that over. And that will be available before Classic goes away. Okay. So that's all the preliminary stuff. So this is what the new system looks like. Let's go ahead and get started with this. If you haven't seen it yet, this is what we call the modern form. If you just go straight to our URL with nothing else added, this is where you'll end up. The search box kind of looks like what Google looks like, any of the other modern search engines. Sometimes that can be a little confusing for people who are used to the more classic style search. In which case, I would direct you to click on this Classic Form tab. Not everybody sees that. If you click on that, this will take you to the multi-box search form, very similar to what you had in the Classic system. It works in a very similar way. So you can put in your authors, publication dates, titles, any of that stuff. It will automatically just translate your query for you. And so when you search, you'll end up on the same search results page that you do with the modern form. And it's sort of designed to help teach you how to use the more modern search form too. You can edit your query and kind of learn how to work with the modern form as needed from there. So for most of this talk, I'm just going to work with the modern form, since that's what we're trying to move people towards, but just know that the classic form is available for you if you do need it. And then one last form I want to point out is this paper form. So the paper form is if you're looking for, say you have a citation in a paper, usually you'll have something like AppJ, it'll give you the year, it'll give you the volume, it'll give you the page number. In that case, you can just put all that information in here, and it will take you directly to that paper that you have. So if you're trying to find a very specific paper and all you have is a reference list, the paper form is really useful for that. But again, that will just translate everything into the modern form, and it just makes it a little easier to construct the syntax. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started searching here. So I'm going to look for a very specific paper. So I am looking for a paper by Kuiper. The up caret indicates first author. That's the same way it worked in Classic. For people who are new to ADS, just know that the up caret is for the first author. And then 1944, that's the year that the paper came out. You'll notice that I'm not using, if you've used the new ADS at all, you'll notice that sometimes we use search tags and things like that. I'm not using any of those right now, but we'll talk about the difference between those things in just a second. So this search that I'm doing right now with the 1944 just kind of hanging out by itself is called an unfielded search. So you'll notice this actually worked pretty well. We ended up getting the paper that we wanted. There's only one result. It was by Gerard Kuiper in 1944. Excellent. He discovered the atmosphere of Titan. So that's awesome. However, sometimes you'll do a search like this and you'll see that the 1944 is maybe actually in the title, maybe it's in an abstract somewhere that you can't see, and you'll end up getting way more results than you want. If that's the case, what you can do is do what we call a fielded search. So you'll start typing the word year. You'll notice that autocomplete sort of appears. So all I've typed is the Y, and then the rest of the word year shows up and it's highlighted. In order to accept that autocomplete, just type enter. So Y and enter, and then you type whatever your search term is. So again, 1944 is here. And we'll just redo the search just to show you it does the exact same thing. Again, that same paper shows up. So you don't always need to add the year tag. Depending on the search you're doing, you may or may not need to use the search tags. But they're useful to know that they are available for you. If you end up getting a ton of results, you can basically tell the system a little bit more clearly what exactly you're searching for instead of letting it try to figure it out for itself. If you ever don't remember what some of the search tags are, you can click on them up here, or we have a whole list of all of them available over on this side. The ones up at the top are just the most commonly used ones. Okay, so now that we've found this paper that we want, let's go look at it. So if I click on the title, it will take us to what we call the abstract page. It's called that because, of course, all of a sudden you can see the abstract. You also get a ton more information about the paper. It'll tell you where the paper was published, so the Astrophysical Journal. It gives you the volume, it gives you the page number, information about the publication date, DOI, bib code. Is there anything else in this one? Basically, whatever sort of metadata we have for the paper will show up here. You also see we have stuff on the right side and on the left side. So on the left side, this is more metadata about the paper. So if you want to see all of the citations to this paper, I can click on citations and I'll just show you the full list. Looks like this paper doesn't have any references that we recognize. If there were references, you could click on that. You get a very similar list to this. There's a bunch of other stuff. So if you are trying to export the citation to BibTeX, so if you are writing a paper and you want to include this in your bibliography, if you click on Export Citation, it looks like I have defined a sort of weird citation thing somewhere in my settings. You'll probably just want BibTeX. But you can choose whatever format you want. So if you're publishing in like Icarus, for example, if you're doing planetary science, you can choose whatever format you want here, and we'll do the formatting for you so you don't have to do it later. And then this is available for you here. Down below, you can either save the file or you can just copy it to your clipboard and copy it into your own bibliography file. Pretty easy. And this is, like I said, if you just want to do it for a single paper, later I can show you how to do it for multiple papers at a time if you don't want to do one by one. So that's most of the basic stuff on the left side. There's some other stuff here. If you're trying to explore more about the paper, you can click on co-reads, which is people who read this paper are also reading these other papers. Similar papers does more of a text-based analysis. So we look at the title, we look at the abstract. We try to find other papers that have very similar words in the title and the abstract and give you those similar papers. And then finally, the thing that most people will also want is full text sources. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see all of the different types of ways that you can read the paper in its entirety, not just its abstract. So my institution, if this paper is behind a paywall, I'll show you in a second how to set up what institution you belong to. And then you would just click on that, and then it would take you, if it's behind a paywall, it would take you to the login page for your library. So here it will make you go through your Harvard key and all of that, and then it will take you through Hollis. And then it will give you the full text of the paper. So people at CFA, I know a lot of people went through a proxy here at Harvard. In Classic, you don't need to do that anymore. So now you just tell the system, create a user account, tell the system you're affiliated with Harvard, and then it will automatically know to send you through Hollis and through your Harvard key and all of that to sign in. So it's a little bit more streamlined. Sometimes the proxy didn't work super well. If the paper is open access, you'll also see some more links down below. So here ADS just means that ADS has scanned this paper. And so we have it available both in PDF and we have the images. The green dot means that they're open access. Depending on the paper, you might also see archive links, you might see publisher links. It just kind of depends on what we have access to. And those will all link out to wherever, out to the archive or out to the publisher's website, kind of depending. Okay, I think that's about it for this. Does anybody have any questions about the abstract page? Anything I didn't cover? Okay, cool. Okay, so say that you are working on some sort of project about the atmosphere of Titan. So let's go ahead and what I'm going to do, you can see what I could do is I could just start editing this query up here if I want to start a new query. I can also click this Start New Search button. What this will do is it will take me back to the search page, but it will also clear out anything that I've added in. So if I had any filters set up, or if I had a really complicated query set up, it just clears everything out, makes it a lot easier to start over. So if you're starting a brand new query, I always recommend you do that. Just sometimes you have something in effect that you didn't know you did. That makes sure everything's cleared out. Okay, so let's just start by looking for Titan. And what I'm doing here, the search tag that I'm using is full. So one thing that the new system has that Classic didn't is we have full text searching. So in Classic, all we could ever search was the metadata, the title, the abstract, the authors, any sort of publication information. That was it. That doesn't work, though, if you're looking for something that maybe only appears in the full text. One thing that I think the full text is really cool for is, say you're trying to use a very specific instrument, and you want to get more information about papers that people, or more specific information about people who have also used that same instrument. A lot of times people don't put the instrument that they use in their abstract, especially if they use several, but it will definitely be in the full text. So it's a really nice way of finding more information about very specific search terms. Same thing for software packages. Those usually don't end up in the abstracts, but in full text they will. You can see, though, we got a ton of results for Titan. We got almost 40,000 results. That's probably too many to get started. So one thing we can do is we can go ahead and sort, play around with the sorting. So if I click up here, it automatically sorts by date when you first do a search. Most searches, some specific searches will do some other stuff. But what I did is I went ahead and sorted by citation count. So I'm trying to get the most cited papers at the top because they're the ones that are probably the most relevant, especially if I'm just starting to do a search for something. But you can see there's probably some stuff in here that is not relevant to Titan, the satellite. Very deep convolutional networks, probably not talking about Titan, the satellite. There's some other stuff in here that's probably not super relevant. You can double check and see where exactly Titan showed up in the full text by clicking on this Show Highlights button. And this will take a second to load because basically we're going and doing a second query and trying to figure out where exactly the word Titan appeared in the full text, so it can take a second to show up. But then when it does show up, you can see here the word Titan is highlighted in a couple what we call snippets from the full text. So of course, this one that looks like it's a computer science paper is indeed a computer science paper. Titan, it looks like, is a type of GPU, not a satellite. But then if we scroll down, we can see, oh yeah, Saturn's main satellite, Titan. That's probably a reasonable paper. So how do we get rid of all the computer science papers? Well, one way you can do that, in Classic, a lot of times when you started from that multi-box search, it would automatically only search for astronomy papers for you. Here, starting from the main search page, we do everything, unless you tell it not to. But what you can use is you can use these filters over here on the left side. So I'm going to limit my results to papers that are only astronomy. So I check off astronomy, and then I'm going to click the limit to. Okay, so now instead of 40,000 papers, I'm down to 24,000 papers. Probably a more reasonable search result set. Also, if I'm just getting started, I probably mostly care about refereed papers. So you can go ahead and check off the refereed over here. And then do a limit to. Okay, and now we're down to about 12,000 papers, a much more reasonable start to your search. I will note that since we've done a bunch more iterations on this search, the sort method has changed back to date. So if you need to change it, just go ahead and click here and you can change this to whatever you want, citation count or whatever. You'll note that the things that we chose from the left side are now appear up here on this top. So the astronomy collection is enabled, refereed papers are enabled. What happens if I add some search terms? So say that I know I'm specifically interested in stuff that happened, information about Titan that was discovered with Cassini and the Huygens probe. So let's go ahead and add Huygens to the search bar. And you can see that the astronomy and the refereed filter are still applied. That's what we call sticky facets. So if you ever modify anything in this search bar right here and you have these search facets applied, they will stay in place. So that's what I was saying. If you ever want to make sure that you can completely clear out your query and start a new one, if you click that Start New Search, those will automatically go away. If you only want to clear out one, you can see there's a little X mark on each of those. So you can just clear out one at a time. But just know that these do show up there and they do stay in place. Some people get tripped out by that when they're first trying to use the system. Okay, was there anything else I wanted to show y'all about this? No, I don't think so. Do y'all have any questions about this part of it?
Did you actually search all the literature the first time to find those 40,000 citations, or did you have that redone? Last based on how fast it is.
Oh, I haven't, yeah, I was playing with this yesterday, but I haven't done anything since. Yeah. We do a little bit of caching, but that's kind of at the higher level. But yeah, it's pretty fast, especially if you're on a faster connection.
You can search through the text of 40,000 papers.
Yeah. Yes, it can actually. Yeah, our search engine that we're using is, it's an open source search engine. It's called Solar, that a lot of different companies use. So it's been optimized for speed. Okay, so let's go ahead and start a new search. Say instead of Titan and its atmosphere, you're actually...
It didn't actually search through 40,000, found 40,000.
It searched through almost 15 million, yeah. Yeah, we have almost 15 million papers in our database right now. Yeah, good call. Okay, so say that you're actually more interested in exoplanets. So in this case, let me tell you what I'm doing here. I'm searching through NextSci, which is an exoplanet database run by NASA. And I'm searching in the data search tag. So the data search tag is actually one of the main reasons that ADS exists. ADS mostly exists, at least on paper, in order to support NASA missions and providing more access to NASA data. So that's what the data search tag does, is it tells you you can search for types of data and types of data products. So things like MAST, the Keck Observatory Archive, NextSci. We can search for all sorts of data that are included in those databases using this data tag. So what I'm doing now is I'm searching for any papers that have any links to the NextSci database. Let's go ahead and do that one. And you can see that, first of all, since I did a Start New Search, those facets are gone now. They automatically clear. And then let's go ahead and look at one of these to see what I mean by a data link. So if I click on this, you can see clearly this is a exoplanet paper talking about sub-Neptunes and things. Over here under data products, so this is a new field. Before we only saw full text sources. If we have any data products, they'll show up right here with the rest of that. And then if I click on my data product, it will take us over to the NextSci database. And this is pretty cool. If you're doing exoplanets, this basically gives you a lot more information about each of the exoplanets. Depending on what sort of data sources you're looking at, MAST will take you over to the observations. I think same thing with the Keck Observatory Archive. So kind of depending. There's also catalogs that Sinbad maintains. So there's all sorts of data products associated with various papers. You guys probably will have some also.
Chandra.
Oh, yeah. Chandra definitely has a ton of data products in the system. So if you haven't seen these data sources yet, I actually didn't realize, so my background is in research astronomy. I didn't realize that there were these data products in here. That would have been super useful when I was doing a lot of work before. So this is a really cool thing that I try to tell people about just because I think most people don't know about it. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, let's go back to my search results. So we haven't really talked a lot about what's over here on this right side. So over here on this right side is a histogram of the publication years of all of my search results. Kind of cool information, maybe not super useful, you're thinking, but there is a slider associated with this, which you can use to limit your search result set without having to type anything. So I'm going to look just from the last 5 years. So basically, I just use my little slider, limit results to papers from, and it shows what those years it's going to search for, and then click on apply, and it will automatically filter your results. And you can see it's also added something up into the search bar just to so you know for sure what year range it's limiting you to. Then let's go ahead and do referee. And sort by citations. I'm cheating because I did this before. Okay, cool. So these are all papers that have a Nexi link of some sort that were published in the last 5 years, and I've just sorted them by citation. So these are some of the most popular exoplanet papers from the last 5 years. If I want to see just how popular they are, we can click over here on this Explore menu. There's all sorts of cool stuff in this Explore menu. If you haven't looked at it, I would definitely recommend you do, and I'll show you a few examples here. So let's go ahead and click on Citation Metrics. Most people are probably going to do this more for an author search, probably for themselves, not judging, but it can be also really useful for specific search terms as well to see what's been well cited. So we have all sorts of information in Citation Metrics. This is just a histogram of the number of papers. Down here we start getting into better stuff. So this is the number of citations, that result set that we had. There's a bunch of stuff in here, including if you are looking at your own citation metrics, the number of self-citations is here. So if you're applying for a grant and they ask how many citations you have, and then they want you to remove the number of self-citations that's in that set, we give you that number here so you can just do the simple difference and make that easy. Then there's a bunch of other stuff, so citations from refereed papers, from non-refereed papers, and you can see the histogram of all of that stuff broken down. We also actually maintain information about reads. So we count as a read anytime somebody clicks on the abstract or downloads the full text of the paper, because we're assuming that they want to know more about that. So here, this is the total number of reads. So anytime somebody has read one of those papers in that full result set. And you can see total number of reads, number of downloads, all sorts of information. You can get lost in all these stats if you're not careful. And then finally, all of the different indices. So most people, of course, know about the H-index, but then we have a bunch of other ones that various bibliometicians, I think is the word, have developed over the years. If you have no idea what a Tory index is, that's fine. Hover over the little question mark, and it will give you the definition of it, and you can see if that's useful for whatever you're working on. Okay, so that's one of the things in our Explore menu. Let's go see what else we have.
I have some questions from the chat.
Yes.
One of them was, is there a way to search for Jupiter, the solar system planet, but excluding the exoplanet hot Jupiter results?
That is a good question. I'll get to that after I finish this example. But yeah,
Okay.
That's an excellent question.
And then also, there is a request for you to use the mouse only instead of pointing to the TV.
Okay. Fair. Thank you, online people. Yes, I will. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the paper network and see what this gives us. This does take a little while to process. So basically what we're doing is we're going through that whole set of results and we're trying to figure out any sort of text clusters. So we're doing a text analysis on, I think, just the metadata, the abstracts and the titles, and trying to figure out if there's any sort of clusters that appear in the paper. You'll see more what I mean in just a second. This, of course, is taking forever because I am standing in front of you right now. Always happens that way. This may not work right now. No, never mind. Just as I was going to give up. Okay, so here is what I mean. So basically, we have subdivided that set of papers. You can see how many papers there are up here, 466 papers altogether. We've subdivided them, and we actually do the clustering based on how many papers reference each other. So the papers in this purple set tend to reference each other a lot, tend to reference the same set of papers a lot, and so we figured that they're probably about similar topics. And then we do the text analysis to pull out some of the most frequent unique words that appear in that set. So K2, Kepler, this clearly all the Kepler stuff. We've got some hot Jupiter things over here. Microlensing is up here in the cyan. If I click on one of these, you can see the papers that make up that set. So theoretically, all of these papers are about microlensing. And just looking at some of the titles, yeah, they're probably about microlensing. So that's pretty cool. So if you want to do a bit of more of a deep dive into the results set, the paper network is a really good way of seeing what exactly you're looking at. If I go back over to the summary, it just basically tells you how, it's a sort of a function of time. So it tells you how many papers in each cluster were published each year. And so you can see trends with time. So basically you can see that the microlensing papers are probably one of the less published ones. Harps was really popular, and then Kepler sort of took over for a little while. Over a longer time span, this is pretty cool, especially if you look at your own papers. You can see what papers you were publishing, what topics you were publishing on a lot, maybe during your PhD, then in your postdoc, and then like later on. So it's a really cool way of seeing how your research interests, or maybe a colloquium speaker's research interests, have changed with time. Really useful for students, actually. If you look up a colloquium speaker, you can go see what they're publishing on, what they're interested in, and how that's changed with time. So that's a really cool thing that you can do. Okay, one more of these Explorer things I want to show you. So let's go back over to my filters over here on the left side. One filter I haven't showed you is affiliations. So our curation staff has done a lot of work on affiliations. Basically, as people who have published know, you can type anything into affiliations box. So if you're at the CFA, that gets really complicated. You could type CFA, you could type Center for Astrophysics, you could type SAO, you could type Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. Before, we didn't have any way of knowing that CFA and Center for Astrophysics were the same. Our curation staff, though, has done a ton of work so that we now know that CFA and Center for Astrophysics are the same, and not just for the CFA, but across the world. So this list over here is really useful now, because if I say click on SI and then click on CFA, I know that as long as somebody provided an affiliation string when they publish their paper or publish their conference proceedings, I know that clicking on CFA means that any of the variations of CFA that they could have entered are now going to show up here. So these are effectively all people who have identified themselves as being with the CFA and would appear in this result set are now here, and you can be pretty confident in the results. So cool, that's still a lot of CFA papers. But let's say I want to know more about a very specific researcher. So we know, of course, all these researchers probably have an affiliation with the CFA, or one of their co-authors did. I know for sure, though, that John Johnson is at the CFA. So let's go ahead and look just at his papers. So we've got 30-something results. And if we go to Explore menu and then click on the Author Network, so this is similar to the paper network, except instead of looking at topics, it looks more at authorship networks. And so each of these wedges is a different group of co-authors that John Johnson has published with over the years. No guarantee that all of the people in a certain color wedge are on every single one of the papers that is in this wedge, but they're probably on most of them. So this is really cool if you know that maybe you're most interested in his collaboration with, I don't know, maybe this purple one. I don't know any of these people right now. So if you're most interested in his collaboration with one of the people in the purple wedge, you click on that. Now you're all of a sudden limited to just the work that he's done with that particular co-author network. Really useful if you know that he works on different projects with different people. Again, you can click on one of these and you'll automatically see all of the papers over here. And then again, the summary tab will show you how participation in those co-author networks has changed with time. Again, useful if you're looking for dissertation advisors, if you're researching a colloquium speaker before you go to colloquium, or job candidates. A lot of people have told me that they like to see who they're collaborating with. So there's lots of different useful things that you can do with the author network. Okay. Let me go ahead and show you the last couple things I wanted to, and then we'll get to that hot Jupiter question. Any questions on searching, though, about this type of searching before I move on? Okay, cool. So let me tell you, I did promise to tell you the cool things you can do if you have a user account. So if you have a user account, I am signed into mine. You click on Account and then Customize Settings. And then it automatically takes you to the library link server. This is what I was telling you, if you are affiliated with a specific institution, so you can log in and get institutional access to papers that are behind paywalls. This is how you tell it what institution you're affiliated with. So click on Library Link Server. I'm already affiliated with the Harvard University Library. If that had changed for whatever reason, if I'd moved, I could click on Update, and then we just have a whole long list. So you can go through and find your institute. We also have a search box. There's a ton in there. So if you don't want to scroll, you can just type in there. You can see I found Harvard again. Click Apply. Easy enough. It will automatically make me sign in with my Harvard key and take me to Hollis when I click on the My Institution link on an individual paper. And then one more thing. These application settings can be really useful if you want to customize the look and feel of your search results or how searches are done. This is where you're going to find all of that. So if you're very particular about how many authors you want to see per results, right now I just have mine on the defaults. If you want your links to open in the same tab versus a new tab, you can change that. If you know that you publish in Icarus a lot and so you want to make your default Icarus, I'm going to go ahead and set mine back to BibTech. So there's all sorts of things you can do in here. The thing that is going to concern most people, though, is this default collections. So right now I don't have anything set. So now when I do a search, if I don't tell it that I only want to search astronomy, then it's not going to search only astronomy. It's going to search everything. If you know, though, that the vast majority of papers you look at are in astronomy, you can click this, and it will just automatically only search astronomy for you. You can tell it on an individual search by search. You can undo the astronomy option, but for most times it's going to do astronomy for you. It can be really useful if you don't want to see lots of results that, those Titan results that were actually computer science. That can be really useful to get rid of some of those. And then if you had any sort of custom export formats, you can set those up there. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, let's go back to hot Jupiters. Let's see what we can do about that. Were there any other questions online?
Yes, yeah, 2 more.
Okay, let's do hot Jupiters first. Okay, so one thing that makes Jupiter versus hot Jupiter a little tricky, for most objects, and now I'm blinking. So say for most objects, I don't think that this is going to work, but let's give it a shot. Say I'm interested in galaxies. I can do an object search, M31, and it's automatically, we go and query Simbad, Ned, and some of our own internal object matching, and we know what M31 is. We know M31 is Andromeda. If a paper mentions Andromeda, if it mentions M31, all of those papers are going to show up. We don't have the best recognition for planetary things, so let's see if this will work. This might actually have done a really good job. Okay. So one thing that we are trying to do, I'll give you a little bit of background before I tell you about this. One thing we're trying to do is we're trying to improve our results for planetary science. So unfortunately, planetary science doesn't have something like Simbad. So for people who are new, Simbad is a database that tells you a lot of information about stars, nebula, things like that. And then Ned is a database that tells you a lot about galaxies. Planetary science doesn't really have a similar database for planetary science objects, unfortunately. We're still working with people trying to figure out how we can improve in planetary science. In the meantime, though, it looks like actually Jupiter worked pretty well. So when I did Object Jupiter, I'm guessing it only queried our own internal database about planetary science objects since we don't have anything in Simbad and Ned. But you can see most of the stuff here looks pretty good. So for people online, yeah, that's exactly what I would tell you to do, is try that Object Jupiter. See if it works. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, especially if it's in planetary science. If you're doing something like galaxies or stars, that will definitely be a good way of limiting those results.
I was going to say, as an additional option, they could also say not.
Yes.
Double close hot Jupiter.
Exactly. So if this maybe doesn't work out, so maybe Object Jupiter just gave you nonsense, then you could do, if you want a paper that's specifically about Jupiter, Jupiter's probably going to show up in the title or the abstract. So instead of doing a full text search, I'll do an ab search, which is the title and the abstract. And then I'm going to do a not, so Boolean operators work here. Probably I'll do a full hot Jupiter. Okay, so what I did here is I've searched for all papers where Jupiter is mentioned in the title or in the abstract, and then I've excluded any papers where hot Jupiter appears in the full text. Since we have these quotes wrapped around it, that should treat it as an actual phrase. I will note, though, it's not always specifically hot Jupiter. Sometimes it's hot, comma, a Jupiter or something like that. Maybe there's some weird syntax, or because we strip out what we call stop words, things like a, the, and, really common words. But usually hot Jupiter will actually remove hot Jupiters. It's a little bit complicated. We can talk more about it after if we need to. But yeah, so theoretically this will give you the results you need.
So we have a comment that says if you use citation count, it doesn't work. It says it gives you 51
go see. So if we sort by citation count here, looks like we're sorted correctly according to citations. I don't know what you, yeah, if y'all have more information about how citation count isn't working, feel free to update your question and we'll come back to it.
Should I say the next question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, now maybe the comment was that that is in fact Hot Jupyter, the first paper.
Oh, is it?
If we look at it. So, yeah.
I think your
Oh, I
last
see.
query was unhappy maybe because you didn't capitalize the J in Jupiter.
It's actually not that sensitive.
Well, it had a red
Yeah.
line under it, it seemed unhappy.
I think that was just my computer being unhappy, not ADS.
So, yeah, in this case, it doesn't say Hot Jupyter in that paper and therefore it's selected.
Yeah, but they're
there's
using
no
Jupyter.
guarantee.
Yeah, so they're using Jupyter, I think, in a different way.
Correct.
So they're using Jupyter Mass, not Hot Jupyter. So then you may need to actually modify your query a little bit and remove Jupyter Mass. The tricky thing about that one is you may actually be referring to the mass of Jupyter. So this is when your skills as a researcher are more important than what we can do. You may have to do a little bit more filtering. There's some other fancy things you can do, like if you know, like if I come back over here, if you know, for example, that certain authors tend to publish more on exoplanets than on planetary science, you can exclude those authors. If you know you're looking, exoplanets tend to be published in the same journals as planetary science sometimes, but say if you are looking specifically for Jupyter things and you know it's an Icarus, Icarus is an exclusively planetary science journal, so you could go look just in Icarus. So there's some other fancy things that you can do that way. Keywords, if there's any other keywords. So
Yeah, sometimes you can exclude.
yeah. So over here, I'm looking at the keyword facet. So yeah, if I do solar system general, keywords are a little bit tricky. Not all journals have the same types of keywords defined. If you're looking at conference proceedings, they probably don't have keywords. So keywords can be a little tricky, but that may help. If you're not looking for a specific paper, if you're looking for more general papers, that may help you limit what you're looking for.
Okay, so next question
Yeah.
then is, what's the difference between abstract and abstract only in all search terms? Is abstract like abstract plus title?
Yes. So I'm guessing what you're talking about is, so up here, if I click on abstract, what does that give me? So that gives me abs. So abs is what we call a virtual field. So it includes several different things together. If you go look at our help pages, we'll tell you what exactly is included in that. If you want to look exclusively at abstract, you can click on abstract only, and you can see it actually spells out abstract, the full word, not just abs. Again, if you go to our help pages, let me show you where our help pages are. About help pages, and then over here under making a query, I think search syntax will give you a whole list. Yeah, so available fields. So this will give you a little bit more information about some of those things. Or of course, just email us. Our email address is adshelp@cfa.harvard.edu.
Okay, and the next one is the caret symbol Kuiper the recommended way to search for authors or using the field author? Is there any difference?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Depending on the author you're searching for. Slightly unfortunately, we're still working on that. So if you're looking for an author who just has a single last name, the up caret will work just fine. The thing that gets tricky is if you have somebody that's got a multi-barrel last name. So some of the Dutch last names, some of the, anybody who's got a hyphen in their last name, sometimes the up caret doesn't work as well as we would like with those. In that case, you can use the full first author search. Oh, I still have random things in here. Let's try this again. That is a bug. Okay, ignore that. We will get that fixed later. This is what it should show is author, double quotes, and then the up caret. So this is the full way of searching. So if you're trying to find somebody that's got a double-barreled last name, this is a better way of doing the search. So in our research group, we have somebody with a hyphenated last name. So we know his last name doesn't work very well with just the up caret and nothing else. It works just fine with the full form. So again, you can just click on first author here if for some reason it's not working very well. If I want to use the autocomplete, if I start typing first author, so I type F and then I press enter, then it will automatically give me the full search. So it's almost as easy as doing the up caret. It's one extra keystroke. F, enter, and then you can type in your last name. Yeah, excellent question.
And I think that's it.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions here in the room?
I think you talked about counting reads. If somebody clicked on an abstract or a text, count it as a read.
Yeah.
So how do you protect that against somebody just setting up an automatic system to?
Yes, that is
many times?
that is a thing that we worry about a lot. We have some protections. We don't want to tell you exactly what the protections are because people can work around them. We do have some protections built in to protect against that. Yeah, that's probably all I should really say because I don't want somebody like.
As long as you
yeah.
thought about it.
Yes,
That
we
was the
have-
purpose of the question.
We have definitely thought about it. We haven't seen any evidence of people like doing that in any sort of large scale. Also, I guess luckily nobody is really using reads as any sort of way of filtering job candidates or something like that. Right now it's just sort of more of a novelty. People like to go look at their reads sometimes. But yeah, I think if people are, I think that means that people aren't gaming it very much because it's not really doing much for them. If people start selecting job candidates based on the number of times their papers are read, everybody will probably escalate and we'll have to do a little bit more work on that. But right now we don't see any evidence that people are trying that very hard. Any other questions in the room? Okay, so for those of you online, we're going to go ahead and move to the drop-in hours portion of the of office hours. So I'm going to disconnect from the YouTube channel. If you want to join us at office hours, we're going to be on Google Meet. It's a bit.ly link, so it's bit.ly, and then the endpoint is ADS_office_hours. So we'll connect there in just a few minutes. Join us there if you have any more questions. And thank y'all.